But what it allowed us to do in all of the cases of all of the war is get exactly at that thing that you're talking about. What actually takes place in war? What is this thing? Like, life is vivified to an extent that we can't describe. Like, our imminent death right now as we speak is not a possibility. But if we're on the front lines, it is at any moment. And life is vivified. We understand why people come home and can't compartmentalize it. We understand why people have problems. We're amazed at the people who don't. It obviously brings out the worst. We're the most dangerous species on this planet, clearly. But it brings out the best, right? And it's worth pursuing. And I think particularly when you take, most recently we've spent so many years studying the American Revolution, we kind of accept the violence of the Civil War. We accept the violence of the 20th century wars. But the American Revolution, they're in breeches and they're in stockings and they have wigs and the ideas are too important. We don't want to admit that this was as bloody per capita as our Civil War, that it was in fact a civil war in ways that even our Civil War wasn't. Our Civil War was a sectional war, North and South, and that we were forged in violence. And it's okay. Those ideas, those big ideas that we seemingly want to protect by like putting in a bug in amber, or, guys in Philadelphia thinking great thoughts, it doesn't in any way get diminished. In fact, it enlarges. It makes them more inspiring and more exhilarating. The understanding that what happened when our country was formed is one of the most important events in the entire history of humankind. I mean, you and I were talking about some of the punctuated equilibriums of comets or meteors or striking this, ice ages. I mean, the Ecclesiastes, the Old Testament says there's nothing new under the sun. And I agree with that. Human nature doesn't change. But for a few minutes, right here, we started something that was brand new. Thomas Paine said, like, not since the time of Noah do we have a chance to do this. And so we've just plowed ourselves into hearing not just those top-down voices, the bold-faced names that we all know, the Washingtons and the Thomas Paines and the Jeffersons and the John Adams, but also the people you've never heard of, right? 0.01% of people have a painting made of them or a drawing. Everybody else is visually anonymous. But somewhere they wrote their name down, somewhere they're in a church record, somewhere they're here, somewhere they wrote a memoir and they got handed down. And so we could bring to life a 14-year-old kid who joins the militia surrounding the British in Cambridge after Lexington and Concord, a 15-year-old who's from Connecticut who fights during the war, a 10-year-old girl who's, from 10 to 16 from Yorktown, who's a refugee for most of the time as her family's well-to-do circumstances are diminished and she has to be on the road because Yorktown is so vulnerable to attack from British. In addition to all of this, and who are the native players? Who are the black players? Who are the Germans, the hired soldiers? They're real people. Who are the Irish and Scottish and Welsh grunts of the British Army? Who are the generals? Who are the diplomats? Who are the French? And then, if you charge yourself with that, you can't turn that out in a year and a half. You have to spend a decade marinating that stuff, finding out what's too much. You don't want to make an encyclopedia. I mean, you started off by talking about entertainment, that you could make something that is, technically educational, entertaining. This is a good story. I mean, the word history is mostly made up of the word story plus high, which is a really good way to begin a story, right?
Yeah.
High. And then we begin the thing. And so I've tried to treat it as that way. I understand, and PBS is really good, and one of the reasons to stay with them is that they can reach every classroom in the country. So today's a school day in America, and hundreds of classrooms are showing a little bit of the Civil War, a little bit of baseball, a little bit of jazz, Lewis and Clark, the Roosevelts, country music, you name it.
Yeah.
And I love that idea that it isn't like broadcast television or even just the release of anything like skywriting, the first breeze, and then all of a sudden you can't see the words anymore. I like the fact that a film I made 35 years ago in the Civil War is like as durable now as it was then. That's all PBS.
That's amazing. It really is. And it is so cool that they do show these in classrooms, because I think that same moment where you saw your father cry, where it gave him some sort of a vehicle to express emotions that he couldn't show in real life, this will give children a way to be educated but also entertained, and it will spark this sort of, it gives them a pathway to maybe children that are like very bored with school and just can't wait to get out. All of a sudden you have this spark of excitement and a pathway to, like, maybe education is cool. Like, maybe there's something about this that's actually fun.
Exactly. Yeah. And we have let a lot of what is fun about it. We've sort of taken history out. We've taken civics out. We don't know about ethics. We don't know about values. We've placed everything over into one sort of set of educational prerogatives, forgetting that you want to build, as our founders said, these well-rounded citizens. Remember, we invented that. Everybody up until the point of our revolution were subjects. Right? Mm-hmm. And Jefferson says a few phrases beyond the famous second sentence. He goes, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable. Meaning, the whole history of human beings is like, okay, I'm going to be under the boot of an authoritarian. I just, that's my lot. I'm just going to accept it.
Yeah.
And he's going, no, central to the success of this new thing you were creating, citizens, was the responsibility to educate and to be educated and to do that your lifelong. In fact, Jefferson could have said life, liberty, and property. He didn't. He said the pursuit of happiness. That was not the chasing of objects, things in a marketplace of objects, but it was lifelong learning in a marketplace of ideas. It was making the story of how we acquire virtue. And they use that word all the time. They imported it from the classical. They went over the Dark Ages, over the Middle Ages, over the medieval period, and pulled back from classical times this idea of virtue, of temperance, of tolerance, and all of that. There's a wonderful moment when John Adams, who's the big worrier of the revolution, he's always worrying. He's saying, I just don't know if there's enough virtue to have a republic. Everybody is so ambitious and so greedy and so out to do this. And so for him, if we were going to create this new thing, something new under the sun, the world started over again, as Thomas Paine is suggesting, an asylum for mankind, he called it, then maybe you had to figure out how to educate your stuff. And so when you go back and say, what have we lost? Whether we're now just repeating, are we trying to get to the test, or are we trying to make a well-rounded human being? So if I tell you, in 1838, there is this lawyer in Springfield, Illinois, who is just a few days short of his 29th birthday, who is addressing the Young Men's Lyceum on an afternoon, and the topic is foreign policy. And he says, whence shall we expect the approach of danger? Shall some transatlantic giant step the earth and crush us with a blow? Then he answered his own question. Never. All the armies of Europe, Asia, and Africa could not by force take a drink from the Ohio River or make a track in the Blue Ridge in the trial of 1,000 years. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we shall live through all time or die by